All right, welcome everybody to Chalice and Chains. My name is Sam, and today I wanted to do a GM commentary video on the third session of our Dark Age of Man RPG Chronicle. This is a series of games that I am running using that RPG set, which is available, by the way, on Driverthrurpg. I have put a link in the description where you can go get that. It is right now, it is a pay what you want PDF. I know that they don't have the full art version up yet, but they will. So keep an eye out for that. But it is a fantastic system, and it is what we are using to run this chronicle. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the process that I went through for running this game, creating this game, this session, and some of the things that happened in session that were really cool. So this is not going to be a recap of the session or the chronicle. If you do head over to Roleplay Cafe Plus on YouTube, which I'll also link below, you can see that Jason, who's one of the players, has done some player reflections and recaps of the sessions that are really good. And they give you kind of an overview, so to speak, of how this all works. And then we will have available, it's not up yet as of the time of this recording, but we will have available our after game chat, which we talk about a lot of things, including mechanics and role-playing intent and stuff. So that'll all be great. But what I wanted to do today is talk about how it works being a quote-unquote naive narrator, which is the term that Jason uses to describe how you, as the presenter of this game, are meant to proceed and meant to plan, really, the adventure. And I kind of wanted to show you how it works in sort of in real life. And then I have a couple of topics that I wanted to bring in that actually showed up in this session that I think are worth expounding on. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of go over just a little bit about how we set things up. There will be spoilers. So if you have not watched the episode and you're intending to, you may wish to watch the episode first and then come back to this video. Otherwise, stick around and we'll go over all of this. And I am going to, when it comes up, I'm going to talk about a couple of things, such as playing your characters in real time, as opposed to maybe jumping all over the place in time. Each session is very much done in real time, which I think most role-playing sessions are, but not always. But it's very apparent in this game how it works. And how I want to show you how the random seed chart that we did up comes into play and how that affects the adventure. And then how kind of splitting scenes or splitting characters can work in this game versus, maybe a traditional game like Dungeons and Dragons, for example. And then I'll probably touch on it here or there, but I really prefer a style of role-playing in which I can roll dice infrequently, and we really focus heavily on the role play. And so what this system can allow, and it doesn't have to, but it can allow for you to choose really how often you want dice to be rolled. In many cases, it really is only necessary in situations where obviously it's left up to chance. So with that said, let's get into it. So this was session 3 of my Saints and Sinners campaign or chronicle. This one I titled Treason and Tribulations. And this one takes place about a week and a half or so after the events of the second session. The goal was for the players to kind of make it into the north, into Northwich in particular. So if you're familiar with Dark Ages history or Middle Ages history. It would be kind of like the Kingdom of Northumbria in England. And they're going to the capital city, Norwich City, which I kind of said the real world equivalent would be York. And then so that's sort of the setup of where they are. And this is kind of how you prep for an adventure. You have your setup, right, which is the general, like, okay, what's going on? Then there's an inciting incident, which is sort of how you introduce this particular session to your players. And so I had decided that they're going to be met on the road by a group of Northist soldiers who tell them that they must accompany them back to their fort, where they'll speak to their leader and explain why they're there. But I didn't really have any idea why that's going to be the case necessarily. I had some thoughts in my head, right? And then we kind of just go from there. The major dilemma and minor dilemma, these aren't necessarily things that you have to share with the players, but these are just what they say, right? Well, the major thing that they're looking to accomplish is figure out the fate of their Bishop Aethelwald, right? So it's uncertain, but it should be found. Whatever happened to him, is he alive or dead? Where is he? What happened, right? The answer should be found in Norwich City. But then there's also the problem of Danish bandits and Norwich soldiers, and they are generally hostile, although not all the time, but generally hostile to the men of Eastumberland, which is the sort of it would be like maybe the Kingdom of Wessex, if we were to, or the Kingdom of Mercia, or maybe a combination, right? Kind of in real history, right? So those are the conditions that exist within the world that the characters are playing in, right? And then how to earn repute, that's just the mechanics. If you figure out one of these things, right, discover the true fate of the bishop, discover the facts about Danish raids into Ireland, and whether the king of Norwich had a hand in that, right? That kind of stuff. Then they can earn a mechanical point, which they can use to improve their character. But the most important part here is the random seed chart. And if you're familiar at all with more traditional old school role-playing games, it's somewhat familiar to, like a random roll table or a wandering monster table or something. But the idea here is that we're not, as the narrator, as the presenter, I'm not planning the session. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm creating possible seeds, possible events that could happen, and I will roll on this table whenever I feel the need, or if there is a lull in the action or whatever, and this will be an incident that I will present to the players, and they will role play how their characters deal with this. And so in the book, or the rule set, this is a 3d6 table, generally weighted for, 7, 8, 9, typically are going to be the more, I think, likely events. And so they don't necessarily need to be the highest stakes, where maybe 3 and 4 and 17 and 18 could be very high stakes events, because they're less likely to be rolled, but they will, if they are rolled, they could be kind of a big deal. It's up to you how you want to do this, but essentially I went in and I try to keep these sort of as vague as possible, because the idea is that these are seeds, and so they give me just a quick little snippet to use to present to the players, but I have to do it in a very improvisational, on the spot way. So in the previous session, in fact, let me scroll back here and I'll show you the random seeds for session 2. And so the ones that I crossed out, some of the ones I crossed out here happened. But one of the ones that happened here was we had visions of Bishop Aethelwald. And so what that was doing was that was indicating that Bishop Aethelwald, the way I had it in my head, this let me know whether or not he was alive or dead, because I didn't have that planned out yet. So this indicated that he had been killed and that the players were seeing visions of him. Okay. And then you can see different things here. There was screaming from a nearby cave, missive from Ireland, and a Dane blood witch. We've heard about all of this, and this all came into effect in that session. But I'm going to go back down to session 3's notes here. So what came up in this session, the very first one I rolled, was Bishop Aethelwald appears in the flesh. And I had put that on there just because I was like, that might be cool, but I didn't have any idea how I was going to do that. The other option I was going to have was the spirit of Bishop Aethelwald appears to the masses. So when I rolled the 5 on my random roll table, and I rolled this early, right after introducing the inciting incident and kind of playing that out, we had Bishop Aethelwald appear in the flesh. So I actually did this and interpreted this as he was essentially resurrected, and he is presenting much like Jesus from the Bible. Now, I haven't decided, and frankly, I don't know yet whether or not maybe it is Jesus that actually has come back and is performing these miracles and whatever, or if it truly is Bishop Aethelwald who has been empowered by God to do these things even after his death as a way of helping the Christians hold on to their faith and whatever. But so this was all I had to go on. Bishop Aethelwald appears in the flesh. So we rolled that, right? And that was pretty fun. That was pretty good. I was able to introduce scenes in which he would appear, right? And he would heal and he would talk. And it was impactful on the characters. And it actually kind of helped, it helped Dell's character, Brother Boethus, to kind of get off the fence, so to speak, and actually take a stand on who he was going to support, which turned out to be, I was hoping that he would be supporting Aethelwald and that, but no, he went with his man, Father Falcone, who is one of the sort of arch villains in our campaign. And then I ended up rolling, the next one I think I rolled was Northmen Raiders. And so what happened there was, as they were traveling, right, they were getting ready to go to the garrison, which is what was in the inciting incident, right? They were going to go to the garrison, talk to the soldiers. What are you doing here in Northumbria? What's your purpose, right? Or Northwich, I mean. But instead, it just says Northmen Raiders. So the way I introduced that in play was that they all hear the horn, a raiding horn from what they assume is a raiding party of Danes, of Northmen. And it kind of introduced the idea that these soldiers, the cavalry that was out here, was there because they were looking, they were scouting. They were trying to make sure that there were no incursions into this part of England. And if there were, that they were ready. And so when they heard these, they went off to investigate, and they told the characters to hide, right? So they did. Turned out there was a party, but the cavalry was able to take care of them, and they ran off. But it gave the characters the time to kind of get to the main city. Okay, so then I rolled, I rolled Good News from Dredgetown next, but I didn't really know kind of how I was going to introduce that yet. So I held that one in my pocket and I rolled again. And this time I rolled Pox-Ridden Family. And so the way I decided to introduce that was by, I kind of had the idea and pop into my head that there was a sort of a city that had, or a small settlement that had sprouted up outside the walls of Northwich City. And it was filled with like lepers and people with plague and just whatever, because they were trying to get into the city to go to the church to hopefully get healed or helped. And they had locked the gates. And so these people, not having the strength or desire to go home, um, basically stayed outside and maybe made like some makeshift hovels or whatever. So they get there, and there is a family that is begging for mercy, and there are soldiers that are basically going to assassinate them, to kill them, because they don't want these plague-ridden families in the city infecting everyone else. So that scene is presented, and then uh, at this point, Brother Boethius, played by Dell, decides that these are filthy, pox-ridden people, that this is the punishment for their sins or whatever. So he's not going to help them. And Janus of London, played by Jason, is a bit shocked by this, because he, while maybe not an overly religious man, has had now several encounters with who he believes to be first the spirit of, and then the actual reincarnation of Bishop Athelwald, and has received some healing of his ailments. So he has been witness to and also benefited directly from presumably some miracles. So his faith is a little bit stronger, and he basically calls out Boethius and says, "These are your people. You're a priest, right? You're supposed to help them." And he says, "No, they're filthy and they deserve what they get." And so that kind of breaks the party, so to speak. But then so there's a scene where they're trying to get into the city because they need to ascertain what's going on. And so Boethius is trying to negotiate with the gate guards, and Janus goes off kind of a little ways outside to just witness what's going on. He wants to see if Boethius is going to get in. And Boethius uses some maybe deception or whatever, but essentially he tells this guard that if he does not let him in, that God will look unfavorably upon him and it will strike him down. And when the guard still refuses, kind of stealthily, he kind of pulls out his cross, and his cross actually has like a little scabbard with a blade that's dipped in poison in it. And so he stabs the guard really quick. Again, it's dark at this point, so it's a bit hard to see, but the guard is poisoned and goes down and dies. And then at that point, the people are like, "Oh my God," because Boethius just said, "Let me in or God will strike you down." And now the guard who just refused him is down. And so, they let him in. And Jason's character sees this, goes in, whatever, right? And so at that point, there's some talking, he steals some stuff, but it's revealed mostly to Brother Boethius that from Father Falcone, who's in the city, that Bishop Athelwald is in fact dead, that he was killed as Falcone calls him an apostate, but he was crucified. And so they ascertained the ultimate fate of Bishop Athelwald. But they're also curious now, what's the next step, right? And so I still had the good news from Dredgetown in my pocket. And then I rolled another one, and I ended up rolling the next one here. Lord Westwald's heir is born. And so that kind of went perfectly, because that informed what the good news from Dredgetown was, right? So during the scene, there's a missive that Lord Westwald's son is born, and because Lord Westwald is married, or Lord Westwald Washburn is married to the King of Northich's second daughter, that should only help strengthen the bonds between the lands of Dredgewater and Northich. That is not within the goals or aims of Father Falcone, and so he tries to have Boethius return. He wants him to return to Dredgetown to take over the position of bishop, and to further foment dissent and rebellion and whatever. And that's kind of where we left it. But this was to say that rolling on these random seed charts, this is really all I had to go with for the adventure. These are not planned out like you might have a more traditional adventure. And, to be honest, some of you may run more traditional systems much more in this way, and that's great. I have found that sometimes doing that can be a little bit tricky because the systems oftentimes are designed for where scenarios have to follow a certain order, or a certain things have to be done in a certain way so as to allow the mechanics of the game to really flourish and function, right? And so where this game doesn't function like that. So that was really cool. I really enjoyed how the random seeds really informed how the session was going to go, because it allows me to have the same experience as essentially as the players, in the sense that in most role-playing games, the players have the world presented to them by the GM. They're naive and they react, but the GM generally is omniscient and knows, or can make up what's in the world, right? Well, all I made up was these small sentences, right? A couple of words. I didn't know what any of this meant. I didn't have any of this pre-planned, right? So it was a way of facilitating that sort of collective role-playing, which I think was really cool. But what it also does is it puts it so that your characters are playing out real moments in time, so to speak. So all of this was happening in the moment. We weren't jumping ahead. It wasn't, okay, we went into the dungeon, we had this fight. 3 weeks later, we've recovered from our wounds, we've spent all our coin, and now it's time to go out on the next adventure, right? This was events that were happening. And then if there are time skips, oftentimes those would be done between sessions. And so it's really interesting to be able to collectively, as players and GMs, react to the unfolding narrative that neither side is fully aware of. And we get to discover and react to this world and the living, breathing events that are happening in real time. We get to all experience that together. So that's really exciting, and it is definitely the style of role play that I prefer. But what's also interesting about it is that it allows you as the player to authentically portray your character in real time. And the consequence of this in this adventure was that Brother Boethius and Jason's character, Janus of London, basically split, right? Now, in some systems or in some games, that can be troubling for a couple of reasons. One, typically in older Dungeons and Dragons style games, D20 games, if you split the party, that could put you at a very real mechanical disadvantage to accomplishing your goals, right? Because the traditional setup was go into a dungeon, try to get some treasure. You might have to fight some monsters to do that. Hopefully you come out alive with the treasure, and then you become rich, and then you do it again. Well, if one of your party goes off or leaves or is whatever, that can put you at a huge disadvantage. But in this case, because we are experiencing the life of these players in real time, there's not necessarily a encounter in that they have to deal with a certain way. It's not a you succeed if you do this, you fail if you do this, right? It's here's the seed, I'm going to present it to you, and then you as the player, you just react to it. And that's it. There's no overarching plot per se. I mean, there is, but it's not necessary to resolve it, right? It's not, and there's no mechanical advantage or disadvantage to say going into combat. In fact, getting into combat in this system is a bad idea because it's a little bit more reflective of what it might be like if you were to do that in real life Dark Age England. You're going to get messed up, right? You're not a bucket full of hit points that you can sponge up damage, and you're not necessarily slinging a bunch of offensive spells around that deal a lot of damage, right? You are generally fairly normal people just trying to survive. And so it's cool to be able to do that. But it means, too, that because we're dealing mostly with narrative and not with a lot of dice rolling or having to kind of get the characters into the same scene so that they can they have a better chance of actually succeeding in the goal and getting the same amount of experience points or whatever, right? None of that has to be done in this system. So it makes it very simple to split characters and split the party. And if you have a group of mature role players, like I do, this is a situation where, as the presenter, you can ultimately have them, worlds apart, and you could just cut back and forth as the fiction sort of, do almost like a screen wipe, right? Where it goes to the next player. That, Janus could be in London and Brother Boethus could be in Dredgewater. And, you can run those scenes and run the game. They don't have to be together. And it's not a nightmare scenario for the game master. So I just wanted to discuss that a little bit, talk about how really I wanted to feature how the random seed chart works in this game. And what I might do, if you guys are interested, and let me know in the comments if you are, what I could do is I could splice parts of this video where I talk about my random roll and then splice in the part of the actual play where it comes into play and you can see it in real time. But if you keep this in mind and maybe you keep this chart up or something, and then you go and you watch the session, you'll see as these rolls come in how they're presented. So hopefully that was interesting, and I'll be posting this up, and make sure that you do the YouTube thing, like, subscribe, and if you're interested in the actual plays but you maybe can't do it on YouTube or you just don't want to watch them, I am making them available in audio format as well. So they will be on they're on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, and this session that I'm referring to now should be going up as of the time of this recording, hopefully in a few days. So by November of 2023, it should be up and available for your listening pleasure. So take care, everyone.